This is a true test or display of the banks versus you. Pay attention to what's going on to determine who benefits and to whose detriment. And then that'll lead you down the path of discovery of if something is good for you or not. Now, let's talk about it. I know you may have heard of the CFPB being shut down due to certain adjustments that are being made due to the administration. But this is important to note so you can understand what's going on. So listen and stick around to the end because your money could be at stake or someone that you know's money could be at stake. So let's dive straight in. Consumer Reports urges Congress to oppose resolution repealing the CFPB's limits on excessive bank overdraft fees. So basically, they're trying to have the banks to continue to charge overdraft fees as they wish. Big banks are pushing Congress to block the CFPB's rules that would save consumers billions. So the CFPB was fighting for the consumers, getting the banks to stop price gouging when it came to overdraft fees. But now the big banks are pushing back and pushing Congress to block the CFPB's rule in their area. Why? Because they want to stay profitable. They want to keep, feeding their pockets at the detriment to the consumer. So Consumer Reports urges lawmakers in Congress today to oppose efforts to repeal a rule adopted by the CFPB to protect consumers from exorbitant overdraft fees charged by large banks and credit unions. House Financial Services Committee Chairman French Hill and Senate Bank Committee Chairman Tim Scott introduced a Congressional Review Act resolution that aims to block the CFPB's overdraft fee limits, which would save consumers up to an estimated $5 billion annually. And French Hill is in my state, so that's interesting. Far too long, banks have gouged economically vulnerable consumers with costly overdraft fees that make it harder for them to stay on track financially. Basically is what the advocacy director at the Consumer Report said. The CFPB's new rule imposes reasonable limits on overdraft fees so they are in line with the bank's actual costs instead of a way for banks to pad their profits at the expense of those least able to afford it. Repealing the CFPB's overdraft fee limits will hurt working families who are already struggling to keep up with high prices and make ends meet. The effort to repeal CFPB's overdraft limits comes at a time when the CFPB is under attack in Washington. Last weekend, then acting director of the CFPB, Russell Vought, ordered the Bureau staff to cease all supervision and examination of activity and all stakeholder engagement and close the agency's headquarters for the week. Vought also alerted the Federal Reserve that the CFPB will not be taking its next installment of funding. So whoever replaced the original guy came in and shut down everything, said, hey, we're going to cease everything. Y'all out for the week, and we will not be taking the next round of funding. Interesting. I wonder who he's, working for. For more than a decade, the CFPB has stood up for consumers, enacting sensible rules to ensure they are treated fairly, and has returned billions of dollars to those who were cheated by banks and other financial firms, said Chuck Bell, Advocacy Programs Director at Consumer Reports. Our country learned the hard way how lax oversight of the financial marketplace can have severe consequences for families and the economy. We shouldn't muzzle the nation's financial watchdog and leave consumers vulnerable to scams and ripoffs, because these big companies will do that. They will take advantage. They will practice predatory lending if they don't have somebody who's fighting for the consumer. And that's what the CFPB was all about, being the watchdog. It at least put a little fear in them. It at least served as a negotiation piece. If the consumers don't have that, then we have to go to other measures. I have some things in mind and some things in place, and it will cause for legality to the point where if CFPB is not suing, then the individuals have to sue. And that can create more lawsuits. So we have to get educated in these areas. Otherwise, we get taken advantage of. Limits on overdraft fees needed. Large banks typically charge $35 for an overdraft fee today, even though the majority of the consumers' debit overdrafts are for less than $26 and are repaid in 3 days, which translates into an annual percentage rate, APR, of over 16,000%. So they're getting charged overdraft fees for expenses that are less than $26 and usually repaid in 3 days. So they're getting an APR 16,000%. by doing it. According to the CFPB, the burden of overdraft fees falls most heavily on low and moderate income customers who make under $65,000 a year. Black consumers are 69% more likely, and Hispanic consumers are 60% more likely than white consumers to live in a household charged at least one overdraft fee or insufficient fund fee in the past year. The CFPB rule curbs excessive overdraft fees in a flexible manner by giving banks and credit unions more than $10 billion in assets the option of charging $5 or a fee that covers no more than the cost or losses. So basically, they're trying to say, hey, you charge up to $5, you can make that, or just no more than what covers the losses. Large banks and credit unions can still offer overdraft loans at more profitable interest rate as long as they comply with existing Truth in Lending Act disclosure requirements and protections for loans like credit cards. The CFPB estimates the new rule will save $225 annually per household that pays overdraft fees. Note, Consumer Reports have collected stories from consumers who have been charged unfair overdraft fees and can work with reporters to identify consumers willing to be interviewed. So, this is the thing. And this was Chuck Bell's article, so I want to give credit where it's due. This is the thing. The big banks are going against you. The big banks are like, okay, while the CFPB is in critical condition, let's double down and tell Congress, hey, we want to reverse what the CFPB was trying to do in terms of the overdraft fees. We want to continue to practice predatory lending and get our 16,000 rate of return. We want to continue to do that. Don't stop us from doing that. You see the CFPB is being shut down. Let the big banks continue to take advantage of the everyday consumer. In so many words, that's what's being said. That's what's being done. So you got to stay in the loop of what's going on. Take full control of your finances, full control of your credit. I got some links below if you're interested in doing just that. But also stay in the know of what's going on and pay attention to who benefits and at whose detriment. And then that'll give you some answers that you need. That's all I got for this video. Mr. Smith signing out. Salute.